What's going on, everybody? So today I'll be going over if Firefly is going to be worth pulling for in version 3.4 of Honkai Star Rail. I'm not going to waste your time. The simple answer is no. Why? She has fallen off, right? Has she been power crept to oblivion to the point where she's completely unusable and she's down there with Dr. Ratio and Sealy? No, not at all, right? She is still a phenomenal DPS, right? I don't like Pride 1 that much, but if we're going off of Pride 1 terms, her damage multipliers are probably sitting around high tier 1 to about tier 0.5. If it wasn't for the issues that I'm going to talk about in today's video, I would probably say that she would be a tier 0.5 unit, right? Damage multipliers are great. Power creep and HP inflation is not the issue here. The main thing is one of two things, but there's one which is more prominent than the other, and that is going to be weakness bar inflation. You may or may not have noticed, but it is getting harder and harder to shred the weakness bars of the enemies in the endgame, primarily in MOC, ever since around the time when Rappa and Fugue came out. This is because the game, like Hoyoverse, wants you to pull Fugue in order to keep on using your super break teams. So if you don't have Fugue, it's gonna be a nightmare using Firefly, right? That's quite literally the main thing. Her damage is great, but you're gonna have a hard time actually shredding the weakness of the enemies, right? If you're lucky, then they may have imaginary weakness as well, so you could potentially use HMC skill, right? Try to get that going. You know, generally Firefly isn't too skill point heavy, especially if you have her E1, because her E1 makes it so that you don't use a skill point whenever you use her enhanced skill, which is huge. But the issue with weakness bar inflation though, right? I'll give you a scenario right now, right? A very realistic one. Let's say I pop Firefly's ult off rip right near the beginning of the cycle, right? I get her going, she's slowly taking away the weakness bar of the enemy. But the issue is the fact that it takes 4 skills to do it when you're not even up against the boss, still on the first wave, right? The first out of 2 waves in MOC, you're still taking forever to take away the weakness bar, right? By the time you actually do it, she's out of her ult and you can't get a good hit in. Best case scenario, you get 1 or 2 good hits in and you're hitting for maybe 1 million damage, right? Maybe 2 million damage if you have a really good Firefly team, comp, and or build. But then the enemies get back up, Firefly gets out of her ult at the same time, and you can't do anything, right? There's not a lot of downtime with Firefly, but that downtime happening at the same time as the enemies and their downtime can really mess you over, right? I knew that this was going to happen way back, right since the very beginning. That's why I personally did not want to overinvest into Firefly. I got E0S0, I got Renmei, and I called it quits, right? Because that is something that they could have done, and a year later, that is what they have done, right? You literally cannot shred the weakness bars of the enemies in so many scenarios in the endgame recently, you know, these past couple months, this past year, because of that, the weakness bar inflation, right? That's not the only thing too though. I will say that is the main thing, but there's a couple other things as well, right? And that is going to be teammates. When you have a team comp in Honkai Star Rail, right, one of the best things you can do is replacing a unit in that team comp with one that is better. I'm not saying you always have to do it. That's why I held on to my Sparkle instead of pulling for Sunday, but it is an option, right? But the thing is, break meta is a lot like dot meta, right? There's a couple units that come out for it, right, once in a while maybe, and then it doesn't continue to get updated. It's not a part of the main meta. Like, for example, most DPSs scale off of crit. Firefly is an exception. Kafka is an exception, right? There are exceptions, and those exceptions will never get the same amount of treatment as crit DPSs, which is why I fundamentally think that crit DPSs will always be the best long term, right, for this game. But break meta right now is a lot like dot meta, in the sense that it's just being abandoned by Hoyoverse. Our last support for break meta was Fugue, and that was back in 2.7. Before then was Harmony Trailblazer back in 2.2. That's 2 break supports in the past year and a little bit, right? That's not a lot. In contrast to the amount of, you know, general slash crit supports we've gotten, you know, we've had Sparkle, Tribby, not really a crit support, but general, right? She gives all type res pen. You can use her with crit DPSs, but not with break DPSs we've gotten Sunday, right? We're getting Regen a little bit. You kind of get what I mean, right? There's a lack of modern teammates for Firefly. Harmony Trailblazer is great, especially if you don't have Fugue like me, but you can only do so much with Harmony Trailblazer other than just enabling Firefly, right? Ren Mei is still a phenomenal Harmony unit, but that doesn't change the fact that she's old. Imagine if they released a unit like Ren Mei that was a little bit, a Harmony unit that was catered a little bit more towards Super Break teams. That would be absolutely ridiculous. If Ren Mei is great and she's 2 years old, imagine a more modern version of Ren Mei, kind of like a mix of Ren Mei and Harmony Trailblazer in a little bit, right? And then there's also Linksha, who I guess is kind of there, but really this Assane isn't the biggest part of a break team comp. You get what I mean, right? The main thing is that there's a lack of new units. So there's a lack of units you can synergize Firefly with, in contrast to Finon, who you can use with most harmonies in the game, any sustain in the game, right? Jinglu, any healing unit in the game, although Hyacinth will be great. Pretty much, I think literally every harmony unit in the game right now can synergize with Jinglu, Blade, right? There are some more niche team comps, like a team comp where Fei Xiao is the main DPS, but you still get what I mean, right? Yeah, that is definitely a big issue when there's a lack of support for a specific archetype. And in this case, it's going to be Break. This team comp was around for a year at this point, with no updates to it. Every relic here, every Lycone, every character, every Eidolon here is at least a year old. So that's about it for this video, right? There's not much else to say. Firefly is not worth it. Is she bad? No. I still use her in Apocalyptic Shadow most of the time. Well, all the time up until I got Finon, so now I really have no need for her. But she can still work in most endgame scenarios, right? Apocalyptic Shadow she'll work. MOC, sometimes she'll work, but you will get diminishing results, right? MOC is a little iffy when it comes to someone like Firefly with the weakness bar inflation, which is most prominent in MLC. And then Pure Fiction it's always been a no-go for someone like Firefly. But that's about it for this video. If you want her, go ahead and get her, right? She's a cool unit. When it comes to like the story, I like her, but meta, if you really need a DPS, Finon has his banner right now. Just go ahead and get him. But that's about it. I'll see y'all. Goodbye.